the 7-time champ who played in 10, joins us now. Tom, I know you've been down this road as a fan and a player, as a broadcaster. How have you prepared for this one over the rest of the games this season?
Well, I've been a lot of times studying a lot of film, reading all the different packets of information that I get and trying to kind of make my notes and try to be really prepared for anything that can happen. I think the difference is, as a player, you're really prepared for one side of the ball. As a broadcaster, you have to prepare for both offenses, both defenses. There's a lot of things that you have on your sheet that you really want to get to, but the reality is, and even for this being a long game, I can't even get to all the stuff that I've already prepared for. But I'm really looking forward to a great game. Both teams kind of had unique journeys to get to this point, but they're both so deserving to be here in New Orleans playing for a world championship.
So, Tom, you did a podcast recently, and you talked about how tough it is going against Steve Spagnuolo, the defensive coordinator, and how all the film that you've watched over the years. Talk about that challenge in this game and something that the Eagles are going to have to overcome.
He's a phenomenal defensive coach, and I said earlier in the season, he's the bane of my existence. And in fact, when we were in the production meeting the other day, Chris Jones, the great defensive tackle for the Chiefs, said, "Tommy, we hired him because he's the one that could beat you."
Wow.
And they brought him in 2019, and they've had a magical run with him as kind of leading that defense. And they're a very challenging defense to go against. They put a lot of pressure on the opposing quarterback, Jalen Hurts, and will be the Eagles' offensive line. They have so many unique blitzes, different alignments, and how Coach Spagnuolo calls the game. You have to be on high alert if you're the Eagles' offensive line and the quarterback. He's going to put a lot of pressure on those guys to be right in their communication all the time. And I'm sure there's going to be plenty of times where those blitzes are going to be really successful. They're going to get to Hurts, and he's got to make good decisions with the ball so that they don't create any unnecessary turnovers, because that's really the story of the game. Possession of the football, to me, is going to determine the outcome of this game.
You know, Tom, it's so amazing to have you in the Fox family. We were so excited when you signed that contract. Welcome to the team. And I can't even believe we're talking to you, because we followed your whole career. What you did in the Patriots, for the Patriots, what you did in Tampa was just remarkable. And we saw you retire and then come back, and everyone was excited. I'm sure that was a hard decision to make. But now being in the box, is it hard? Is it difficult to not be out there on the field?
I look back on my playing career, and I feel like there was nothing left in the tank, and I'd love to throw the football. I still do that all the time. That will always be something I love to do. I mean, football was truly my first love, and I love competing at the highest level, but I loved all the elements that came with playing football, the camaraderie, but also trying to master yourself, trying to master your physical skill, trying to master the preparation of the game. And then I always got myself to an emotional kind of feverish pitch by game day. I knew that I was only competing for 3 hours a week. I wanted to be at my very best, and I tried to take that approach every day in practice so that I could be prepared for moments like this. The Super Bowl preparation didn't start for these teams, you know, after the AFC and NFC championship games. They started in the summertime, 6-7 months ago, when these teams came together. They had a belief that they would be here in this moment, and that's ultimately what they're preparing for, and that's what championship organizations are all about. You don't wait for big moments for them to become big moments. You live those moments every day like they are big moments, so you're prepared when the moment arises. So if you want to be able to deal with pressure, you better put pressure on yourself all the time to succeed. And if you do that, you're going to put yourself, like these teams are now, in this place with this opportunity to go out there and win this world championship.
So there's so many preparations with the 10 Super Bowls you've been in. There were so many times you always made eye contact with people. You tried to answer them, be respectful. But then this one young man asked you this question in 2017, and it really stuck out with us. Let's watch.
Who's my hero? It's a great question. Well, I think my dad is my hero, because he's someone that I look up to every day. And my dad. So, yeah.
and that was a young kid asking you a question, and it caught you. What were you thinking now, and does it bring you back then of the journey you went through to be where you are today?
Yeah, I was so blessed to have a mom and dad that supported my athletic and career journey every step of the way. And I had a great foundation about family and about commitment, support for one another. And at the time, my mom was battling breast cancer, and my dad was there supporting my mom through her treatments, and it was a very challenging time for our family. And I just think about my dad and the commitment that he's made to her, to my sisters, to myself, to his grandkids, and he's the greatest man I've ever known, and I still feel that way. I try to make him proud in everything that I do, and when you have an example like that, like I did with my dad, I can just take what he taught me and try to be that kind of dad that I am for my kids.
You know,
and
Tom,
that's ultimately how I can. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry about that, Tom. To that point, I guess the question, because you have all this experience, now you're in the booth, I guess what is the one piece of advice you would give to these players? Some of them, this is their first time going to the Super Bowl. That piece of advice that you wish someone would have told you for that first moment, what would you tell them?
I think a big part of this this experience ultimately comes down to what you do on game day. And all these things are really nice, and getting all the logistics done and the tickets and being part of this Super Bowl extravaganza is awesome. It's really an event. It brings so many families together. So many of these players will reflect on the times where they weren't playing in the game and they were there at home with a barbecue, with all the dips and chips and all the food and people just enjoying the game. And now they're in this moment. And what they remember from this week will ultimately be the game. And all these other things are great, but do everything you can to not let anything get in the way of your preparation. And it still goes from now up until game time. There's a lot of things that can distract you or take your mind away from what ultimately the goal is. And the goal is to go out here and win the game. Whatever it takes, for however long it takes, these guys need to be locked in for those. Ends up being about a 4-hour game.
Yeah.
And everything they can do to conserve their energy, to be prepared when it matters most, that's really where they need to lock in.